With just days until the WNBA's negotiation deadline, everything hinges on what happens next, and Caitlin Clark is right in the middle of it. This isn't just about one player, though. The league's bold proposal to push maximum salaries over $1 million and dramatically increase minimum pay has changed the tone of the conversation. But progress hasn't brought peace. The players' union continues to press for something the deal doesn't offer: revenue sharing. That battle over fixed pay versus shared profits could define the league's financial model for decades.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Meanwhile, Project B and Unrivaled are waiting in the wings, offering better pay faster. The stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just a clash over numbers. It's a reckoning with what the league wants to become. The WNBA is no longer just fighting to survive. It's proving it can thrive. But if it wants to keep stars like Clark and stop emerging leagues from pulling talent away, it needs more than a flashy offer. It needs alignment with its players. Veterans want equity. Rookies want security. And the clock is running out. The decision made in these final days won't just shape contracts. It'll shape the very foundation of women's professional basketball. The WNBA just threw down a gauntlet. A new CBA proposal is on the table. And for the first time in league history, players could be looking at million-dollar salaries. Yes, over $1 million officially on the books. It's the kind of leap that players, fans, and advocates have been demanding for years. And while the announcement sent shockwaves across sports media, what's brewing behind the scenes is anything but a slam dunk. Let's start with what makes this offer historic. The numbers are game-changing. Rookie minimum salaries could hit $220,000. For veterans, that minimum jumps to over $460,000. And the maximum salary? North of 7 figures. The WNBA has never seen anything close to this before. That alone is enough to make headlines, and understandably so. This proposal fundamentally changes what it means to be a professional women's basketball player in the United States. But those eye-popping figures come with fine print. And the fine print is exactly where things get complicated. Because for all the progress this offer represents, it doesn't include one major thing: revenue sharing. The WNBA's proposal is rooted in fixed salary increases, tied to league growth in a broad sense. But there's no built-in mechanism for players to directly benefit from the revenue they help generate. That's where the standoff begins. The players' union isn't backing down. They've been pushing hard for a revenue-sharing model, something that reflects what their counterparts in the NBA have had for years. NBA players receive over 50% of league revenue. That's not just a number, it's a principle. It means when the league wins, the players win. That's the model the WNBA's athletes want. And so far, they're not getting it. This is where the tension really escalates. Because while everyone agrees the salary increase is long overdue, there's a clear divide between what the league is offering and what the players believe they've earned. The WNBA wants financial stability, especially with rising operational costs and new investments. But the players are saying, growth is happening because of us. And without a share in that growth, the system stays unequal. The timing couldn't be more intense. The league is staring down a November 30th deadline. If there's no agreement by then, the 2026 season could be in serious trouble. That's not just a hypothetical. It's a looming reality. League operations could stall. Drafts delayed. Free agency frozen. A potential work stoppage could throw off everything from sponsorships to season ticket sales. The pressure is on, and both sides know it. But just as the WNBA is trying to show it's stepping up, competition is knocking on the door, and not quietly. Two emerging leagues, Project B and Unrivaled, are aggressively courting WNBA talent. They're offering top salaries, off-season income, global exposure, and opportunities the WNBA hasn't historically provided. These aren't empty promises. They're backed by money, ambition, and a growing appetite for women's sports on a global scale. This new wave of competition is shifting the power dynamic. For the first time, players have real options. They're not trapped, and the league knows it. That's why this negotiation isn't just about money, it's about retention. If the WNBA can't keep its top stars satisfied, they risk an exodus. It wouldn't take much. A few headline players signing with Project B or Unrivaled could spark a trend that the league may not be able to recover from. Which brings us to Caitlin Clark. There's no avoiding her name in this conversation. She's not just a rising star. She's become the face of the league's growth. Her games sell out arenas. Her jersey numbers top the charts. Her highlight reels go viral. She's a draw for sponsors, fans, and media alike. The fact that she's now eligible for a salary north of $1 million under this proposal shows just how much the league recognizes her value. But Clark's influence isn't just in what she earns, it's in what her presence means. If someone like her, with all the spotlight and sway, is satisfied with the deal, that sets a tone. If she's not, that could trigger a domino effect. The league knows this. They've built much of their current momentum around a handful of major names, and Clark is front and center, which makes her position on the deal and the broader issues around revenue sharing all the more important. But the divide isn't just between players in the league. It's also among players. There's a growing split in the locker room. Some want to lock in these massive salary increases now. For veterans who've spent years grinding through off-seasons overseas, this new compensation is long overdue. For younger players and rising stars, the math looks different. They're willing to push harder, to wait longer, to risk more for the chance at a revenue-sharing model that could pay off in the long run. That internal tension is making negotiations even more complex. Not every player is fighting the same battle, but they're affected by the same outcome. And the stakes are high, because the WNBA isn't operating in the shadows anymore. Viewership is up. Attendance is climbing. Media rights are gaining value. Brands want in. The product is hot, and the athletes know it. They're not asking for theoretical gains. They're asking for a piece of the very real pie they helped bake. That's why this moment feels different. It's not about scrapping for survival. It's about deciding what kind of league this is going to be. One that continues to hand out fixed salaries while controlling the upside, or one that allows its athletes to grow with the league. This CBA is a fork in the road. It's historic in terms of pay, but incomplete in terms of power. And if the WNBA thinks players are just going to accept one without the other, they might be underestimating just how unified and determined this generation of athletes really is. What happens over the next few days is going to shape the next few years. And not just for the WNBA, but for women's professional sports at large. If the league finds a way to meet players in the middle, with both historic pay and shared profit, it sets a new precedent. If it doesn't, it risks losing its brightest stars to hungrier competitors. This is about more than contracts. It's about who gets to benefit from the rise of women's sports. It's about whether leagues evolve with their athletes or get left behind. So what do you think? Should the players take the massive salary increase or keep pushing for a piece of the revenue they help create? Is the WNBA's offer a true turning point or a temporary fix to buy time? Let us know in the comments. Drop a like if you think it's time for real revenue sharing. Share this if you're following the league's next move. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a beat. This isn't just a sports story anymore. It's a power struggle with everything on the line. There's a reason this story has the entire sports world buzzing. And it's not just the headlines about million-dollar contracts. It's because the WNBA is standing on the edge of something seismic. For years, people have talked about the potential of women's basketball. The talent's always been there. The passion undeniable. But now, for the first time, there's an opportunity to turn that potential into permanence, into wealth, into power, into legacy. And yet, the fine print is everything. Because here's the kicker. The WNBA's proposed CBA doesn't include revenue sharing. That absence isn't just a technical detail. It's a message. It says, we'll pay you more, but we still control the profits. It says, you're worth more than you were, but not quite enough to share in the growth you're helping create. That's the line the players are being asked to walk. And not everyone's willing to take that step. The players' union has made their stance clear. Yes, they see the pay increases. Yes, they appreciate the momentum. But they're not here for short-term gains if it means selling out the long-term structure of sport. They want something more sustainable, something future-proof, a system where players don't just play the game, they benefit from its success proportionally. Right now, the NBA operates on a revenue-sharing model where players get more than half of the league's total income. When the league earns more, players earn more. It's directly linked, and that's exactly what WNBA players are asking for. Why wouldn't they? They're the product. They're the ones training year-round, performing at the highest level, selling jerseys, filling seats, and driving engagement. The WNBA's growth didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because the players made themselves impossible to ignore. And the league knows it. They wouldn't be proposing seven-figure salaries if they didn't feel the pressure. But here's what makes this situation so volatile: timing. The November 30th deadline is looming. If an agreement isn't reached by then, the 2026 season could face delays or even a complete shutdown. That's not just a hypothetical. That's collective bargaining reality. Miss the deadline, and everything's on pause. Training camps, rookie development, marketing campaigns, all of it. This isn't just about locking in a paycheck. It's about protecting the future of the league while the world is finally watching. Because the WNBA's growth hasn't been subtle. Attendance is up. Viewership is climbing. The buzz is getting louder. This past season, people tuned in not just because of the competition, but because of the culture shift. The energy around the league has changed. And at the center of that shift, players like Caitlin Clark. Her presence in this negotiation is symbolic, but it's also strategic. She's the breakout star, the one drawing eyes to every game she's in, the one influencing broadcast deals and brand partnerships, the one whose highlight reels are trending every other day. Clark's potential to earn over $1 million under this new deal is huge. It sends a signal. The league sees her value. But that recognition only goes so far without a system that lifts all players as the league expands. And that's where this tension deepens. Because Clark might be the headline, but the union is speaking for every player, not just the superstars. They're thinking about the ones who don't go viral every game, the role players, the rookies, the veterans, the ones whose names might not be plastered across the ESPN ticker, but who still keep the league competitive and credible. They deserve a cut of the growth, too. This isn't a case of rich players wanting to get richer. It's about restructuring the foundation. But the WNBA isn't negotiating in a vacuum either. They're under pressure from all sides. Internally, they want to grow while maintaining financial control. Externally, they're watching new leagues, Project B and Unrivaled, make real moves to disrupt the system. These aren't hobby projects. They're well-funded, backed by serious investors, and promising players things the WNBA hasn't always been able to deliver. More money, off-season flexibility, and broader exposure. That's leverage. Real, tangible leverage. And it's changing the tone of these negotiations entirely. Because suddenly, the WNBA isn't the only game in town. If players aren't happy here, they have options. And that shift in power is what's forcing the league to act. But whether they go far enough is still up in the air. And here's the dangerous part. Even if the WNBA locks in this historic CBA, the absence of revenue sharing might still cost them in the long run. Because money isn't the only thing keeping players loyal anymore. Vision is. If athletes don't believe in the league's direction, they'll walk. Maybe not all at once, but slowly, strategically, and it'll hurt. That's the risk. The players want the league to meet them halfway, to acknowledge that growth isn't just about raising salaries. It's about restructuring the system so that success is shared, the way it is in other professional leagues, the way it should be here too. The WNBA has always had to fight harder for legitimacy. Now, it has the platform, the attention, the money. The spotlight is bright, and with that comes accountability. These negotiations, they aren't just a moment. They're a referendum. $1 million salary used to sound like a fantasy in this league. Today, it's on the table. But so is a deeper question. Does the league trust its players enough to let them share in the profit? That's the conversation that matters now. Not just the dollar amount, but the model. Not just the raise, but the role. Because a CBA without revenue sharing tells players, we'll reward you, but only on our terms. And after years of carrying the league, after pushing the game forward despite every obstacle, those terms may not be enough anymore. This is where things either evolve or implode. The fans are watching. Sponsors are watching. Competing leagues are watching. What the WNBA does next will define not only the next few years, but the next generation. This isn't a time for safe plays. This is a time for transformation. So now it's decision time. Will the players accept the best offer the leagues ever put forward? Or will they keep pressing, risking disruption for the sake of long-term equity? And if no deal is reached, what then? Do fans start watching Project B games instead? Do rookies begin weighing their international options more seriously? Do the league's biggest names look elsewhere? There are no easy answers. But one thing is crystal clear. The players are no longer bargaining from a place of desperation. They're negotiating from strength. And they know it. So where does that leave the league? At a turning point. Accept the new era. Or we'll try to manage it. Let's cut straight to it. This isn't just a collective bargaining agreement. It's a referendum on who controls the future of women's basketball. The WNBA's latest offer is a massive leap forward in terms of salary, yes. It's the first time players are seeing numbers that reflect what they've always been worth. It's not just a raise, it's recognition. Rookie minimums skyrocketing to $220,000. Veteran minimums above $460,000. And the most shocking figure of all, over $1 million for the league's top talent. Unthinkable a few years ago. Historic today. But as monumental as that sounds, and it is, that one missing piece is casting a shadow over the entire deal. Revenue sharing. Without it, the players are being offered a ceiling, one that might be higher than before, but it's still a ceiling. It says, here's your salary, and that's where your benefit ends. Meanwhile, the league's potential earnings are poised to explode. Viewership is rising. Merch is flying. Media rights are increasing in value. Sponsors are signing on. And who's making all that happen? The players. The same players now being told they can have more, but not too much. And here's the part that's driving the tension through the roof. The league is this close to its breakout moment. Momentum is finally on its side. People are watching. Fans are engaged. Social media is amplifying every highlight. The old narratives about nobody caring, they're dead, buried, gone. But that growth is fragile. And if the league fumbles this negotiation, it could all unravel. Because now, the WNBA isn't just negotiating with players, it's negotiating with history. And it's doing it while two new, well-funded competitors, Project B and Unrivaled, are standing by with open arms and open checkbooks. Those leagues are offering something the WNBA can't afford to ignore: options. Real ones. Players don't have to wait and hope anymore. They don't have to sacrifice income or flexibility. They don't have to grind through back-to-back overseas seasons just to pay their bills. Project B and Unrivaled are stepping up with the cash, the visibility, the benefits, and, maybe most importantly, the respect. They're treating players like the stars they are. And that's not just appealing, it's empowering. This changes everything. Before, the WNBA had the leverage. Now it's a two-way street. And the longer this negotiation drags out without revenue sharing on the table, the more players start seriously looking at the exits. And let's not pretend this would be a quiet departure. If a few top-tier stars made the leap, it wouldn't be subtle. It would be seismic. Think about it. What happens if someone like Caitlin Clark walks? This isn't theoretical. Clark is central to everything right now. She's already become the face of the league's growth. Her games are must-watch. Her name drives clicks, sponsorships, and ticket sales. And under this new CBA proposal, she could break the seven-figure mark. That's never happened in the league's history. But that million-dollar paycheck doesn't guarantee loyalty. Not if the rest of the structure isn't built to last. Because Caitlin Clark might be getting the bag, but what about the players grinding in the background? The role players, the defenders, the unsung contributors who hold the league together and keep the games competitive? They're not just playing for a paycheck. They're playing for a future where their work means something long-term. Revenue sharing isn't just about dollars, it's about dignity. It says, you are part of this league's success, and you will grow with it. That's what's missing from this proposal, and that's what the union wants. But here's the pressure point. Not every player is aligned. There's a rift. Some want to take the money now. And who could blame them? If you spent the last decade making less than a WNBA mascot, a six-figure salary looks like freedom. It looks like validation. For many veterans, this deal is the raise they've waited their whole careers for. But others, especially younger players and rising stars, are thinking bigger. They want to reshape the system entirely. They're not just thinking about 2025, they're thinking about what the league looks like in 2035, and they're not going to be satisfied with a raise if it means signing away long-term equity. This internal division makes the union's job even harder. They have to balance these conflicting needs: urgency versus patience, survival versus vision. Meanwhile, the league is playing a delicate game of optics and economics. They want to show progress, avoid a PR disaster, and maintain control. They know if this negotiation stalls too long or fails outright, it won't just be a bad look. It could threaten the viability of the 2026 season. November 30th isn't just a deadline. It's a ticking time bomb. If there's no agreement by then, the consequences are real. Drafts delayed, free agency frozen, a complete standstill in operations, and worst case, a strike. All of this right when the WNBA is finally being taken seriously in the mainstream. This is the worst possible time for a work stoppage, and the players know it. But they also know this is their shot to change everything, to redefine what it means to be a pro athlete in their sport, to go from being paid to play to being invested in. That's why the stakes feel so high, because they are. If the league pulls through and delivers both the historic pay increases and a path to revenue sharing, it sets a precedent, not just for women's basketball, but for women's sports everywhere. It tells every little girl watching that if you work hard, if you fight for your value, the system will rise to meet you. But if the WNBA stops here, if it says this is all you get and draws the line short of revenue sharing, then all the talk of growth starts to sound hollow. Because growth that doesn't include the players is just profit. So here's where we are. The league has made its biggest offer ever. The players have made their biggest ask ever. And the world is watching. Will they meet in the middle? Or will history remember this as the moment the WNBA had everything in its hands and let it slip away? You can feel it in every press release, every vague statement, every leaked negotiation detail. The pressure is enormous. The consequences? Bigger. The players have shown what's possible. The question now is whether the league is ready to match that energy, not just in dollars, but in vision. And if they don't, there are other leagues ready to welcome those stars with open arms. That's not a threat. That's the new reality. So what do you think? Has the WNBA done enough? Should the players hold out for a true share of the revenue they generate? Or is this the moment to take the money and build from there? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like if you think this negotiation is about more than just a raise. Share this with someone who's been following every twist. And make sure you're subscribed, because however this ends, it's going to be a defining chapter in the history of the league. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about what women's sports can be when players demand more and refuse to settle for less.